Welcome to the YP2 Learning and Evaluation virtual kickoff webinar. I want to apologize for some of our technical difficulties. We're still working on getting all of our speakers included into the webinar platform, but we're just going to go ahead and get started and hope that we'll be able to get everyone on board in time for their speaking during the webinar. So I'm Christy Olenek. I'm Vice President of Technical Services here at Making Sense International and Project Director for YP2LE. That's what we affectionately call our YouthPower 2 Learning and Evaluation Project. I want to thank you for tuning in and for your interest in this new YP2LE effort by USAID, which is a follow-on to our YouthPower Learning Project. Let me tell you about today's agenda. We'll start with an introduction to YP2LE by our Contracting Officer Representative, Patricia Viala, from USAID's Office of Education. I will then provide some background on our expected YP2LE activities and our team. Then we'll be asking you for some input on the research and learning topics you'd like to see us explore as part of our YP2LE work. This will be led by Maria Brindelmeyer, Senior Knowledge Management Specialist here at Making Sense, and Audrey Marie Moore from Mathematica. Then we'll end with some time for questions and answers. If you have a question at any time during the webinar, please type it into the chat box and we'll address it at Q&A time. I'm just going to check and see if Patricia is now on the line, if she's ready for me to pass this over to her. Patricia, can you hear me? Okay, unfortunately, we haven't been able to connect Patricia in, so we're going to go right to...
Hello? This is Patricia Viala. Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Patricia, are you there?
Yes, we heard you. We heard you, Patricia.
Hello, this is Patricia Viala. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Patricia, please go ahead and speak to your slides if you're ready.
Okay, I'm seeing that people can hear me, so I'm going to go ahead. Unfortunately, I can't hear anybody else. So I am going to go through my presentation, and I hope people will be able to follow it. So I would like to introduce myself. First of all, I'm Patricia Viala. I'm an education officer with USAID, and I am the COR for YP2LE, which is the abbreviation of YouthPower 2 Learning and Evaluation. This was awarded on September 30th, 2019, so we are in the nascent early stages and very excited about this activity. And the purpose of YP2LE is to leverage and expand upon YouthPower Learning's many achievements. As I'm sure you're all aware, YouthPower Learning has contributed to the evidence base on what works in positive youth development. They have developed a number of resources, tools to help practitioners implement PYD, as well as developing platforms like the YouthPower.org website, as well as the relatively recent YouthLead platform, which you'll hear more about, and as well as also launching and managing several communities of practice. So we're very excited about leveraging and expanding on these many achievements, and also building on what we've learned, and continue to improve as we move forward. The second bullet is, yes, we will continue to build and disseminate and utilize positive youth development evidence across all the sectors we work in. So there will be a big component of conducting research and analyses to continue to fill those evidence gaps that remain. We also, with this project, seek to provide leadership in promoting PYD best practices, and as continuing to also provide that rapid response technical assistance that we've been able to provide USAID staff all over the world under YPL. So that will be continuing under YP2LE. That is doing, for example, country youth assessments for missions, or helping with design of PADs, CDCS's activities, as well as also participating in evaluating youth activities that have ended or completed. So I'm going to move to the next slide. And I don't know if I control that. Oh, good. Somebody else controls that. So YP2LE definitely aligns with many USAID priorities, policies, and frameworks. For example, the journey to self-reliance, as I'm sure a lot of you are hearing about or have heard about. You know, a country's journey towards, no longer needing foreign aid to develop itself. And so youth obviously play a key role in that journey. I don't think a country can move forward to self-reliance without working with and developing their youth. So definitely YP2LE will help a country along that journey. And how? Because YP2LE is, again, going to continue to provide the latest research, the latest evidence on what are those best practices for youth development programs, so that we are helping a country maximize the potential of their youth. We also are in alignment with the USAID Youth and Development Policy, which puts youth at the center of our work and wants to mainstream youth across all our sectors. And it's a development policy that actually, as most of you know, is committed to the positive youth development approach, which is looking at youth as not problems, as not issues, as not challenges, but rather looking at youth as assets, and wanting to engage, promoting the engagement of youth throughout the development process. A big emphasis within the agency in the last few years is this push towards trying to work with non-traditional partners. And in YP2LE, there's a big emphasis on working with youth leaders, working with youth-led organizations, in addition to youth-serving organizations, but really making sure that youth and their organizations are part of the solution. And then, again, this is a reiteration, we want to engage youth as equal partners. You know, they're not just the beneficiary. They should be at the table telling us what their goals and aspirations are, what are the challenges they face, and they should hopefully be working with us to achieve those goals. And then the last thing is that obviously a journey to self-reliance requires working, functioning, healthy systems. And the PYD approach that YP2LE and YPL have been championing definitely is a systems approach. You know, it's looking at youth and in a holistic way. So we're looking at not only just the assets, building youth assets or agency, but we're also looking at youth enabling environments, strengthening local youth systems. So this approach and YP2LE will continue to help expand research and evidence on how we can build these and strengthen these local systems. So that's definitely in line with our with the PYD approach and how YP2LE will help us further along that journey to sustain, strengthen local systems. So next slide, please. Okay, so obviously we're not starting from zero. YouthPower Learning has done a lot, has produced a lot of, important learning and evidence. So definitely we want to learn from that. We're not here to repeat, to duplicate, to ignore. We definitely want to leverage and build upon what the accomplishments and what we've learned, and also see, well, what's still missing? What are those evidence gaps? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong slide here. I apologize. My slide is different from your slide. Okay, so let me restart this slide. So this is, what do we learn from YouthPower learning? What are some of the things that we came to understand? And those are the items that we intentionally made sure that in the design of YP2LE we would capture that learning. We would make sure that it was designed in such a way as to incorporate what's working and what could have been maybe needs more emphasis from YPL. So for example, youth engagement throughout the program cycle, we've come to realize through YouthPower learning that it's super important that we are intentional about that. We think that from the 5 years of work under YPL, that some of that was happening, but it was almost organic. It wasn't necessarily systematic. And so we wanted to make sure in YP2LE that that was at the core of everything we do. And we say the entire program cycle, because youth, we believe, can help partner with us to achieve development goals throughout those different stages of the program cycle. We also, so being more intentional about youth engagement was definitely at the heart of the design of YP2LE. The value added, the second bullet, of cross-sectoral youth programs. We saw cases of that in the field where projects tackled more than one technical sector for youth, and we want to continue to explore those synergies. And YP2LE is going to definitely have an emphasis on what happens, how does it work when we can approach youth in a holistic manner and, in a cross-sectoral manner. So that lens is definitely behind everything we do in YP2LE. So bullet 3 is about the idea that we need to also be sure that we're being inclusive, that we're including all youth. And so here's the emphasis on making sure that young women and girls, youth with disabilities, LGBTI youth, youth in crisis and conflict areas, these are just examples of some of the marginalized youth that we would also want to make sure that we prioritize in our work. And that it's really important that we don't just generate evidence on what's working in PYD or youth activities, but the importance of being intentional about sharing it widely so that it reaches practitioners in a very user-friendly way. So that it's not just we're producing research and, these great reports, and that's wonderful, but we want to make sure that what we're learning is repackaged or is being packaged in action-oriented tools and guidance for our folks out in the field on the USAID side, for implementing partners, for local partners, so that in the end, the purpose of that research is so that it reaches the hands of the people who need it the most, the ones who are actually implementing youth programs. So the YP2LE was designed in such a way to facilitate that dissemination of very actionable learning products. Next slide, please. So that's, again, the bottom line here. YP2LE is trying to connect PYD learning with implementation. So we're talking about a cycle of learning and implementation. It's an ongoing cycle, and it goes both ways. So, for example, we hope under YP2LE to continue to produce and disseminate evidence to inform programming. But at the same time, YP2LE will also be capturing the lessons learned from program implementation to further build the evidence base, which then informs future programs. So it's this continuous cycle of helping one another, sharing best practices, lessons learned, through this community of practice, and benefiting from what other programs and activities are doing. And learning also from any mistakes. You know, we all make mistakes, right? We benefit from that, from learning, oh yeah, that didn't work because this component was missing. And so that's going to help inform future programs. Make sure we include that particular component or whatever. Next slide, please. So one way of sharing, the sharing that we would like to facilitate under YP2LE is collaboration across the YouthPower family within USAID. What I mean by the YouthPower family, as you know, we have a lot of YouthPower 1 activities still active and on the ground. And then we also have YP2LE with its, you know, partners, and we also have all the USAID folks, either in Washington or operating units that are managing or supporting these YouthPower activities. And so it's like we wanted to make sure that, and this was, again, a big lesson learned from YouthPower 1, is that what was happening in Honduras, for example, was super interesting. There was an interesting workforce development project there, and it generated a lot of interesting evidence and, you know, best practices and so on. But maybe a project in Kenya would have benefited from that. So we wanted to, as part of the, how do you say that, as part of the tasks that YP2LE will be, you know, implementing, is setting up a framework or a platform for regular meetings, frequent regular opportunities for all the YP implementers and their USAID counterparts that are implementing YouthPower activities. And to get them to be talking to each other frequently, so that they can share those best practices, lessons learned that are being generated every day or being discovered every day in the field around the world with each other, and to develop those synergies. And again, YP2LE is not going to keep that information just for USAID practitioners, not at all. We want to definitely connect any of those gems that are coming out of these opportunities in the field, and they're going to collect these and disseminate them across all of YP2LE's activities, which you will be hearing about, so that they are shared widely within the YouthPower 2 learning network, and all implementers of youth programs can receive and share back, and there's this continuous flow of learning. Next slide, please. Thank you. That's an easy slide. Thank you so much. We are super excited. We are looking forward to partnering with all of you in this wider YP2LE learning network, and just thank you for your time, thank you for your interest, and thank you for your partnership.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Much appreciated. We look forward to working with you as well. I'm going to move us to the next slide and tell us a little bit about the activities planned for YP2LE, and talk with you a little bit about our team here. So you heard from Patricia how YP2LE is designed to build, expand, disseminate cutting-edge relevant evidence in PYD, as well as to revitalize the current YouthPower Learning Network, making it more collaborative and innovative. We also want to make sure that we are creating accessible and actionable knowledge that can be used by a variety of different audiences, some of the ones Patricia talked about. We want to make sure that USAID can use our information, local youth change makers, youth-led organizations, the missions, other implementing partners. And so we want to make sure that folks have what they need to apply PYD principles in their work. Taking the work of YouthPower Learning forward, will be focused on creating sustainable systems change. And we believe that this change is best realized by putting the right information, tools, and resources in the hands of empowered youth and supportive adults. The project is divided into 4 tasks. Moving to the next slide. The first one is focused on advancing the PYD learning agenda and answering other youth-related research questions. The PYD learning agenda was developed under YouthPower Learning and identifies gaps in the evidence and knowledge needs related to 5 main themes. Those include understanding PYD impact in low and middle income countries, investigating how PYD creates impacts across sectors, education, health, civic engagement as examples, creating improved measurement of PYD constructs through the use of new measurement tools in PYD, and researching the influence of youth engagement in PYD activities. In order to conduct this youth-focused research, we'll be looking for input from USAID and the Learning Network members, like yourselves. In fact, you'll be providing some of your feedback today. Once we conduct that research, we'll be disseminating reports and guidance and learning products that help practitioners apply this new data and information to their youth programming efforts. All of our products will be disseminated through our various communications channels, so be on the lookout for those in the coming months. Under Task 2, we're focused on growing our learning network. We'll be taking some time to conduct an assessment of our current YouthPower network, what's worked, and what can be improved. We'll also be looking at what incentivizes network members to participate and how we can engage new audiences in the network. We would especially like to look at how we might engage the private sector more intentionally in PYD, as well as more young leaders and change makers. We will be continuing our learning webinars. We're also going to be hosting a PYD learning symposium in year 2. And as Patricia mentioned, we'll be working to build stronger collaboration amongst YouthPower implementers and with USAID. So Task 3 is all about enhancing our youthpower.org and youthlead.org learning hubs. We'll continue to post important evidence, resources, and tools so you can better design, implement, and evaluate your PYD programs. And we'll conduct an annual survey to make sure the platforms are meeting your needs. As a way to continue and expand YouthLead, which is our activity focused on engaging young changemakers, we'll be creating a youth advisory group to provide us feedback on all of our YP2LE activities. We expect to include youth who have skills in communications, research, advocacy, and more. And we're really looking forward to that. Finally, under Task 4, we'll be working to provide rapid response technical support to USAID to ensure practical application of PYD principles and frameworks. We anticipate there will be a number of research projects, technical reports, toolkits, and country-focused youth assessments, as there have been under YouthPower Learning. These activities will allow us to build the capacity of local institutions, research firms, youth-led organizations, as well as local USAID missions and others. And we'll be disseminating all of these products through our platforms and through our various communications channels. If you are already on our YouthPower mailing list or connected to our social media channels, you will definitely be informed of our new reports and products being released. So now let me tell you about all of the people who will be carrying out this work, our YP2LE team. We have a number of partners that will be continuing on with us from YouthPower Learning, and we've recruited some new partners as well. To grow and enhance our learning network, we'll be partnering with Global Knowledge Initiative, FHI 360, and the Cloudburst Group. To help us build the evidence, we'll be working with Mathematica, International Center for Research on Women, University of Washington, University of Melbourne, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Premise Data, and NORC at the University of Chicago. So we got a lot of universities in there. We're also going to have some new partners on youth engagement. We want to make sure that we're engaging youth more fully in all of our activities, as well as building the capacity of our young change makers. We have Restless Development, Voluntary Services Overseas, Cinecons, Youth Alive Uganda, and Young America's Business Trust helping us with that. We also have 3 key personnel on our YP2LE team. That's myself, Maria Brindelmeyer, and Audrey Moore, who I've already introduced and who will both be facilitating some input from you all shortly on our research and learning priorities. We'll also have Making Sense task leads. In case you'd like more information from either of them on activities taking place on the project, we have Dr. Chelsea Palatino, our Research Evaluation and Learning Manager, and again, our Maria Brindelmeyer, our Knowledge Management Guru. Other team members you'll likely meet or receive communications from are on this slide. While they're not full-time on the project, they have an important role to play. We have Lindsay Wolf, Deputy Director of Operations, Susan Massey, our VP of Projects and Operations. Sarah Sladen will be our Senior Youth Engagement Advisor. We have Ava Cantrell, Director of Communications, and Rachel Stepka, our Communications Manager. Cole Simcoe, who's helping on events. And last but not least, Jessica Carrera, who's providing administrative, technology, and all kinds of other support. I'm very happy to have such a strong team. Okay, now I'm going to pass it on to Maria and Audrey, who will get everyone involved in co-creating YP2LE. Don't forget to include any questions you have in the chat box, and we'll get to them shortly. So, Maria and Audrey. I'm passing it to Audrey now. Yes. Audrey?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Christy. Can you hear me? Okay, excellent. So I'm very excited to be part of the YouthPower 2 learning team. And what Maria and I would like to do is engage everyone in the community in helping us as we're finalizing the work plan and the kind of research and learning that we're going to be both building on from YouthPower as well as exploring new areas in YouthPower 2. So as both Christy and Patricia mentioned, task 1 in particular is going to be focused on conducting a series of studies each year that YouthPower 2 is working. So these studies are going to be divided into kind of 2 buckets. So we'll have some long-term studies where we really want to look at the potential activities, how they kind of span the life of YouthPower 2. So potentially looking at the impact on cross-sectoral outcomes, the impact that the PYD framework is having on programming for youth. It's likely that we'll try and do some longitudinal studies and have actual primary data collection in the field. The second kind of study is going to be focused more on short-term studies that build from some of the work that was already completed under YouthPower. These might include case studies, desk reviews, likely more secondary data collection, or building on opportunities as we get some of the task orders under task 4 and task teams out in the field where we're able to maybe conduct some interviews and focus groups. But definitely leveraging what's already been done under YouthPower and continuing to build that evidence. So as some of you know, when we were sending out links to this kickoff meeting, we included a link to conduct a short survey. We were trying to pull together some information ahead of the kickoff meeting. And we've gotten a few responses in terms of both the long-term and short-term topics that we're interested in doing. These topics are here on the slide. These include looking at systems change, The PYD impact across sectoral outcomes has been one of the most important topics that we hear not only from the community, but also from USAID and the partners under YouthPower and YouthPower 2. Others have mentioned drivers of change, what drives change in youth programming, what works in scaling PYD programs, and what are the enablers of youth engagement. But because the survey didn't go out until earlier this week, we haven't gotten a lot of responses. So what we want to do is engage all of you in getting your thoughts on the topics that we would want to focus. So we're going to do a quick Adobe poll where the first question is really related to more of the rigorous evidence, the long-term studies. So if you can go ahead, the topics are systems change, the PYD impact on cross-sectoral outcomes, drivers of change, PYD impact on vulnerable and marginalized populations, the impact of youth-led programming. And if you choose other, you're not able to actually write it in, but if you want to put it in the chat box, if there's a different topic that's outside of the ones that we have listed that you think is particularly important for YouthPower 2 to focus on as a long-term study, if you can type that in, we'll pull those together. So we'll give you just another 30 seconds or a minute to finalize your voting. Okay. Did we get everybody? Okay, so the poll's closed. So let's go ahead and do the second question, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about the results here. So the second question has to do with the short-term research studies, the ones that are building on previous topics that were covered under YP, under the YouthPower project. So if you can all quickly vote on this one, and the same applies if you have a different topic or other that you know was done under YP2 or would be particularly suited to some kind of a desk study or secondary study or short qualitative study. If you can type that into the chat box, we'll make note of that as well. Okay, so I think we went ahead and closed out. So going back to question 2, the three most selected topics were impact of youth-led programming, PYD effects on marginalized and vulnerable populations, and the cross-sectoral impacts. We only have about 5 minutes, and we'll come back and during the question and answer, and we can talk a little bit more particularly around some of the other areas. But in terms of the PYD impact or the impact of youth-led programming, it would be great to hear from some of you that are on the webinar what kinds of impacts would be of particular interest, because the impact of youth-led programming is is broad. So impacts on what? What in particular would be helpful for us to look at? If we can take maybe a couple of minutes and have some thoughts from participants, that would be really great. Does anybody have
Audrey,
thoughts?
can you see the chat box? I see impact on different sectors included, impact on peers, community, another one on across multiple sectors. How does youth programming impact overall results, positive outcomes?
And Nancy, when you say positive results and outcomes, what particular outcomes? Can you be more specific? Is it against the PYD assets, the framework, or is it more broad, such as economic outcomes, particular skills? I see academic outcomes. Okay, civil security and democracy, employment and youth, and economic growth. Okay. Okay, this is really helpful. So as we move forward, what we're going to be doing is working with the advisory group to narrow down and focus in on some of these studies. But the poll has been very, very helpful. If you still have a chance to take the Google poll or the Google survey that we sent out, that would also be really helpful. Christy, I think we can resend the link if folks are still interested, because we'll go ahead and analyze that data as well. And then during the question and answer time, we can talk a little bit more if folks have other inputs. But I will pass it now to Maria to talk about some of the dissemination efforts.
All right. So then next we have two kind of quick slides about dissemination aspects. We included some of these questions, as Audrey mentioned, in the online poll. So some of you who have taken the poll will have seen the questions, and that is what some of these responses are that we are showing here. So what we are interested in to learn more from you is how we can improve and make it easier for you to use some of the results that we are finding from the research that is being carried out, but also how we can make the tools more useful for all of you. So, sometimes we may have a tool that's a Word document or a PDF that we have published, but would it be useful, for example, to have PowerPoint slides that accompany that tool? Or would it be useful to have webinars? We typically launch new tools with the webinars that either, tools that either we have developed or that YouthPower Action has developed or that some of you all have developed. So we are always very interested in helping with the dissemination of new findings and tools. And so these questions that we are going to ask in the upcoming poll are about how can we make it easier for you, and we have some suggestions, and also the areas in which you would like additional dissemination tools or additional dissemination activities. And so from the poll, the aspects that people are most interested in is engaging families, how to engage families and understanding that better in terms of good practices and tools about that. Challenges of engaging youth, creating opportunities for youth decision-making, and establishing skill-building components for PYD programs. And so I will open again the poll questions that are related to that, and would like you again to answer those. We have, again, a multiple choice And then we would like you, any additional topics that you're suggesting for which you would like to have additional tools, better tools, to just type them in the chat box again. So, this first question is about, from a dissemination perspective, which topics would you like to see in terms of webinars? And so, challenges of youth engagements, effects of conflict and violence on youth, training educators in youth peace building, engaging families in soft skills development, technology platforms, ensuring inclusion, and examples of systems changes. So these were just some initial ideas that came out of previous meetings and other suggestions. And so again, as we said, if you take the online poll, you will also be able to directly type in other suggestions in the poll, and we hope that you can put, somebody says, can you put the voting box lower? Okay. And you can type some additional thoughts here in the chat box. So employment, entrepreneurship, and SME development, great idea, Mike. Or also I see engaging policymakers. Yes, I think that's a really important topic. More sustainable livelihood skills development as opposed to the quick cash hustle culture. I think that's a really interesting and challenging topic. The role of volunteering, yes, I do think that we definitely want to focus more on that, which is also one of the reasons why VSO is very much engaged with us, and we're talking with them already, even under YouthPower 1. So thank you for answering the polls. I will close the poll now. And based on the responses here, I can see a lot of interest in starting at the bottom, systems change. Definitely, I think something that we are also very much interested in, and we know how important that is for the sustainability and self-reliance. So definitely a key component. Engaging families, yes, we completely agree. The challenges of youth engagement, and again, really we've had some discussions about that, and I think definitely merits more. Ensuring inclusion, and I saw that at the very beginning of our webinar, there was also a question about inclusion, and that's definitely something that we will focus more on. And we're also looking at different solutions on how we can provide more inclusive webinars. So I think definitely also on our list. So let me hide this poll. And let me go to the next poll. I will move it in the middle again. So this one is more communications tools and information. So creating safe spaces, developing youth-friendly systems, opportunities for youth decision-making, skill-building components, participatory research, positive norms and expectations. Again, this is a list of some of the examples from previous discussions and suggestions from previous meetings, but we're very much interested in getting your additional suggestions, either by typing it here in the chat box or by responding to the poll, the online one. So I can see here a lot of interest in creating opportunities for youth decision-making in PYD programs. I'll give it another minute before I close the poll.
People are still voting.
Yes. And I see some suggestion here in the chat box. Programs in education and employment need to have a reproductive health and family planning component. Yes, so I think Loretta mentions a really important aspect that we've been discussing with USAID, and we know USAID is particularly interested in, is the whole cross-cutting aspect of PYD programs, both from the idea of, should PYD programs be cross-cutting from the onset and designed as PYD programs, or can PYD programs, even if they're designed as an education program, what can be cross-cutting effects that are coming out as a result of a single sector program? So definitely topics that we are very interested in. So I'm going to close the poll now. So the youth decision making of high interest, establishing skill building components, participatory action research. Yes, I think we are also definitely very interested in that, and the whole aspect of youth engagement is something that we want to take advantage of in all our research activities, and then developing youth-friendly systems. So thank you for all your poll answers. And then recognizing youth as development stage is one of Lisa's comments in the chat box. Yes, really important. When we created Youth Lead, for example, that whole idea of, youth is going, obviously, is advancing and perhaps growing out of being young youth to older youth to no longer being youth, and recognizing these different developmental needs and aspects in terms of youth programming, but also recognizing the fact that youth can have a role, even if they're no longer youth, as mentors, and helping other youth is something that we are definitely interested in from a youth engagement perspective. So thank you for all your suggestions that you have been typing in. We will take all of those and capture them. And we have one last question, which is about formats of sharing and disseminating findings and research. And so, again, we have some here that mention infographics, learning briefs, videos, blog posts, virtual workshops, webinars, PowerPoint, slide decks with notes, and we're just interested to hear from you what you want to have more of, like what are really useful tools that we should perhaps increase or add additional dissemination tools. And again, if you have any additional thoughts that are not on the list, type them here. I can see a YouTube series. Yes, so that would be definitely kind of videos posted on YouTube. And by the way, any videos or any webinars that we have been running under YouthPower Learning, they are all posted on YouTube and accessible for anybody. All right, so I'm going to close the poll now. So infographics, more of those, learning briefs get the high vote, virtual workshops and PowerPoint slide decks and webinars kind of are following in the importance here in the poll. So thank you very much. Yes, podcasts. We've certainly been thinking about that too. And I think that it's a really important format. We just want to approach it with a lot of thought so that we don't just push out one podcast. We want to really be thoughtful about the topics and how we want to disseminate that. So thank you for all your suggestions. This has been really useful. And we will send out the link to the online version again after the webinar today, and hope that you can add additional thoughts there. So thanks a lot.
And I hope everybody's been listening in on the Young Women Transform Prize podcasts. If you haven't, you can get it on what? Oh, on youthpower.org. But also, I get mine from my Apple Play or whatever. Yeah. Looking at my technology gurus here in the room. Okay. Thanks so much, Audrey and Maria. Now we're going to move to just some questions and answers time. I'm not sure if Patricia can hear us, so we may or may not be able to get her to respond. If you have something specific for Patricia, you could identify her in the chat box. Hopefully she can see your question. But please, let's go ahead and get started on Q&A. So there have been some questions that came in earlier. They look very tied to topics related to things that we would be investigating.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you. So a lot of the questions that came in earlier.
You've reached your teleconference. Please enter your room number and the pound key.
Patricia, we can hear you.
You are joining the meeting.
Hello, can you still hear me?
Hi, we can hear you, Patricia. Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you, but there's a big echo because the only way I can hear you is to have my phone dialing in as well as the microphone.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we can hear you okay right now.
Do you hear my?
It's okay. It's definitely fine. I mean, it's not interrupting anything too terribly. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Patricia, the questions that we have right now that I think we may be able to tackle are around communities of practice. Will communities of practice be fostered and supported through YP2LE?
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to speak to that, or would you like me to?
So do you want me to answer that? So yes, I will answer that. And of course, Christy, if you have anything to add, please do. So definitely we're going to be continuing this community of practice. And instead of just diving in and continuing the current communities of practice that were developed under YouthPower Learning, the idea is to, as Maria said, survey the users, the members rather, of these communities of practice and see what is it that they like and would like to continue, what is it that they would like to change moving forward, and all of this will be integrated into informing a learning network, a wide learning network that we hope will attract all sorts of members from all sorts of organizations, institutions. It's all inclusive. The idea is for one big umbrella learning network that will capture anybody who is interested in joining because they have an interest in positive youth development. And then we would decide, I guess, with user feedback, what are the themes they would like to tackle underneath this learning network, and those teams can be rotated, yearly, and be really responsive to the current needs or interest areas of members. So the idea is to be a responsive learning network. It's to be all-inclusive and responsive to member needs, member priority areas and issues. And so the communities of practice will continue. They might take a different shape, but the idea of having a PYD community of practice is very much a part of the YP2LE project that will be continuing to connect PYD implementers with, the latest research, the latest evidence, the latest tools, the best practices, lessons learned. All of that will be shared and disseminated widely through the network. I don't know if I've answered the question sufficiently.
Yeah,
I'll stop
Patricia,
there.
I think that's really a good answer. I don't have much to add except that, as I mentioned, we'll be starting off with an assessment of the network, and we'll be getting your feedback, all the folks who are on the line, on what the network should look like, what the priorities should be, and that includes kind of what form various groups will take, whether they're working groups, communities of practice, or other. Patricia, another question has come in, a couple that I think are really relevant to you to help answer. There was one that asked about what the links were going to be between YouthPower 2 and the YouthPower implementation projects.
Okay, so the YouthPower implementation projects that are still active and running are going to be part of the PYD learning network that YP2LE is going to be, expanding and growing. And then within that learning network, as I mentioned in my slide, there's going to be a mini community or a subset, let's put it that way, a subset of the learning network that would involve all the YouthPower 1 and YouthPower 2 implementers and USAID staff, so that they can be learning across the activities.
Excellent. Patricia, you're still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
I wanted to make sure you were finished answering. Okay. Another question has come up that seems also relevant to you. It's about the business forecast. Let's see. We saw in the Q1 business forecast Q&A that the follow-on to YouthPower implementation, where did that go? Will not be released as an IDIQ. What will be the mechanism of YP2 implementation? Do we have any information about that?
Mm-hmm. So that's something we can't share at this time. That's procurement sensitive. But it is true that because it's on the forecast, it does mean that USAID is interested in procuring and awarding potential youth implementation activities in the future.
Great. Okay, there's a lot of questions here. Patricia, do we happen to know under Task 4 of YP2LE whether there'll be a specific focus on special countries or missions under Task 4?
So there's, yeah. So no, any operating unit, any mission, any DC office is welcome to buy into the mechanism and request support under the Task 4 menu of interventions, which includes youth assessments, informing CDCSs, designing paths, designing activities. Yeah, but not implementation.
Great. Okay. There's another question here, which I think we can speak to, probably both of us. How will we link with non-YouthPower but holistic youth projects? I think, definitely through the Learning Network, we want to make sure that we're connecting with holistic youth projects that are non-YouthPower. I think we definitely currently have network members who are not affiliated with YouthPower. That includes local youth-led and youth-serving organizations.
Yes, please don't mistake what I said earlier about this mini subset of the Learning Network, which is just the YP family within USAID, but that's not the greater Learning Network. So the big Learning Network includes everybody under the sun who is interested in positive youth development. Either they just want to know more about it, they're currently implementing and working in it, and such and so forth. Are they looking for partners, etc.? So definitely everybody doing holistic youth development or interested in learning about it is most welcome, and from our perspective is a partner that we would love to engage with and learn from and share experiences with.
Great. Thanks, Patricia. There was a question around what we know about who's using the PYD indicators developed under YouthPower Learning. I think you're probably speaking to the PYD measurement toolkit. I can say that anecdotally, we know that folks are using those PYD indicators. And I think we'll be learning more when we develop our report looking at, the successes under YouthPower. There is kind of an end of project report that will be coming out April of 2020, which will hopefully document some of the successes like those that we have been hearing about. Okay, so one question here is, can we request technical assistance? And who pays? Well, that's a very interesting question. I think that the answer is it kind of depends on whether you're a YouthPower partner or whether you're a non-YouthPower partner, or potentially a USAID or a mission. So certainly USAID missions and YouthPower partners can request technical assistance. If you're a non-YouthPower partner, we want to make sure that we can provide whatever support we can to you. I think it depends on what kind of technical assistance you're talking about. So oftentimes, yes?
Sorry, I just want to make sure that I can jump in after you answer.
Yeah, I was just going to say that oftentimes under YouthPower Learning, we have done various trainings, we have provided resources, we've shown up to various presentations to help support. So there's a variety of things we can do. It all depends on how you're defining technical assistance. So Patricia, please.
Yeah, so just to add to that, absolutely, the YouthPower2 Learning and Evaluation Project, by conducting and disseminating evidence, by sharing these resources through platforms, by connecting experts with each other through the Learning Network, all these are examples of technical support that YP2LE provides all Learning Network members. But it's true that there's one task under the YP2LE contract that is specifically for USAID missions and Washington-based offices to buy in so that they can get the service that they want to help them with designing, implementing, and evaluating youth development projects. You know, so this is a service specifically for USAID staff.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm finished.
Yep, great. Okay, next question is, will YP2LE be able to provide small grants for research and case studies to the wider field? I can answer that, in that we do not have a grants function under YP2LE. So at this time, we won't be providing grants under YP2LE. That could possibly change, but currently we do not have a mechanism for that. Okay, so the next question is, will YP2 coordinate with USAID on the current focus on measurement, assessment, and tracking of disability and relevant issues of this subset of populations? I appreciate that question. I think we'd love to do that. I don't know that we have been, you know, engaged in that effort under YouthPower Learning, but yes, we'd love to track that. So thanks for that suggestion, Lynn. Okay, next question. Is there information on countries and missions that are receiving support? So I think this is related, Patricia, to your response about the task 4. Are there, can we provide information on the countries and missions that are receiving support? I can tell you that all of the countries that we've been working with under YouthPower Learning, the products are posted on youthpower.org. So there are reports, mostly cross-sectoral youth assessments, that are posted on youthpower.org under resources.
If you go to the country drop-down, there are all the different assessments directly there. And if you search under resources, you'll find them also.
Thanks, Maria. We're not providing any technical assistance quite yet under YP2LE. Okay, yes. I think we've answered most of everything that is in the chat box. I'm just going to give another minute to see if anything else comes in. Patricia, was there anything else that you wanted to say, kind of based on the Q&A and the polling?
Just that I was really impressed with the suggestions and input that was received. Very, very useful, and we will be looking at that closely. Also, so grateful for this opportunity to link with such a nice community of people who are interested and engaged and experienced in PYD. It's we can't do this alone. We all learn from each other, and that's how we go forward in a more efficient and useful way, beneficial to the youth. So I'm just excited, basically. Excited to be a part of this community of practice.
Thanks, Patricia. We have one last question, which is, what are the timelines for technical assistance to begin under YP2LE? I'm happy to answer that, Patricia. We do have information on some technical assistance projects that may be coming down the pike under YP2LE. We have not formally started work on those yet. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think with that, we're kind of out of questions, but I want to thank everybody, Patricia, Audrey, Maria, in particular, for presenting today. As Patricia said, we're going to be taking your feedback and incorporating it into our work plan. We look forward to working with you, and please be on the lookout for information on YP2LE as we move into the new year 2020. So thanks again for your participation. It's much appreciated. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.